It looks like I'd be crying, but it's super not. Oh, wow. That's like fucking awful. Doesn't matter. Mama. Huh. People are complaining from Snapchat. Really? Tell me. Yes. 4 months ago. Let's hear it. Come on. Give me the good news. Give me the good word. If you want to ship.
I want to bring you some breaking news. The Ontario government is reporting over 18,000 cases of COVID-19 in the province today. We'll break down those numbers for you next hour. Meanwhile, the Ontario government says it will stop reporting the number of COVID-19 cases in schools. And that's angered many in the healthcare profession who are questioning that move. Let's bring in Doris Greenspun. She's the CEO of Registered Nurses Association of Ontario and joins us more with her reaction to this decision. Let me get to this tweet that you put out last night. You tweeted that Ontario parents have entered Trump land. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, well, what happened during the administration of President Trump, as you know, is let's not do testing because the more testing you do, the more cases we have. And then, of course, let's not report. And the moment that you don't report, and to me the most striking was the last presser of Kieran Moore, the Chief Medical Officer of Health in Ontario, which really I thought it would be different than Dr. Williams, but it's proving to be a very, very concerning politician more than public health servant. The reality is, if you don't test, which already we are not testing enough, so the numbers, Hannah, that you will be reporting are not really 1,800. They're more like 5,000 likely. If you don't test, and then if you don't report in the schools, if there is an outbreak, basically you are saying you don't diagnose and you don't count. Dr. Moore also said that people that will enter the hospitals for reasons other than COVID, say they have an appendicitis, he said, and that's kids in general, or they come from a car accident, or they come from another condition. If they then show to have COVID during the hospitalization, they also will not be counted, which means even if people die from COVID, Hannah, and they were not diagnosed or tested for COVID before they enter the hospital, they will not be counted as death. The reality is...
Let me just jump in here for a second. You're talking about Dr. Kieran Moore. He's the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario. And one of the things you mentioned is that it was a political decision. He responded to that. He says, he said on Thursday, it's to limit testing to high-risk individuals was a political one. Moore pushed back, saying the province would test everyone if it had the capacity. He said they have to pivot to where there's ongoing community activity. How do you respond to that?
I respond that that's absolutely not the case, that the province has the capacity to test, certainly has the capacity. It's a choice if you want to be transparent and report, or what Dr. Moore also said is basically in the spring we will have a highly, a population that will have, we will be much better off. Basically, let's ride it. Let's ride it and see where it lands. The reality is, Hannah, that there are less than 100 beds for ICU for pediatrics in this province. And if we do not manage this pandemic, the coronavirus, the Omicron in the schools we will end up with kids that will not have access to those pediatric beds. Every single year, we have issues with pediatric beds in ICUs in the province, only with the flu, let alone with the flu and Omicron now. So let's not test, let's not say how many we have, let's not report in schools, and what happened will happen, and we will deal with the system collapse.
What do you make about the argument that there aren't enough tests to go around? And as children are generally at lower risk, there's not much point in reporting positivity rates. What about the fact that there aren't enough tests?
Well, first of all, children in the US, we can already see, we just choose not to speak about that, are ending in hospitals in large numbers. They're ending up in ICUs in large numbers. They transmit the virus the same as an adult. And the children that will be affected here the most, including their families, are those in low-income populations, people, same as in the first and second wave in long-term care. We will end up now in pediatrics and in the third wave. Basically, people that cannot afford to pay privately a test because people are paying $200 for a test privately. People that cannot afford the KN95 for children, which is $3 each. So some of us bought for our grandkids or kids. Most people cannot afford it. So basically, we are letting down the same people that we have always let down, Hannah, those that cannot afford private services. And so the question is this also a way to start to privatize healthcare, as they have done with nursing, by the way, Hannah? They have not responded to the crisis in nursing. They have not repealed Bill 124, and nurses are moving to agency, and then hospitals pay 3 times the money. So it's a way of privatization. It's a way of letting down those that are most vulnerable, not helping them.
But so for parents, even with Omicron, they are still keen to get their kids in school. They don't want to see them lose more classroom time. When would you like to see a return to the classroom?
Well, let me tell you this. Let me start with our own kids, my grandkids. They're all going back to school. It's important, but did we get them the KN95 at $3 each? Yes. Can most parents do that? No. So nurses are not saying schools, should not be open. Nurses said schools should have been open with absolutely strong public health measures outside of schools, meaning we didn't need to have all those events of 1,000 or more people gathering. We needed to say for the holidays to absolutely prevent large events, prevent large gatherings. We needed to close the malls. We needed to close the Boxing Day, large boxing stores, right? Not the small places. Those are not the places where things are happening, Hannah. And we didn't do any of this. So to me, basically, to nurses, the government once again chose the business priorities of the well-to-do business, quite frankly, not even the small-to-do business, in lieu of protecting children, which not only will end up in ICUs, and you will see that, and it will be a tragedy, also will bring back the virus to the same populations that it happened before, that they need to go to work because they are on minimum wage, that they live in crowded quarters because they cannot afford big houses, the same old same. And that's what nurses so oppose, and that's what most doctors so oppose. 500 signed, yes, open, but the rest, which is 30,000, and no nurse has signed that, basically are saying kids need to go back to school in safe conditions, and that is not the case. And that's what's tragic here about Dr. Kieran Moore, and also celebrating that the Minister of Education, Stephen Lachy, did everything he can. No, they didn't do everything they can. The only one has done everything more is actually Minister Phillips in long-term care, with the 4th booster to seniors, with the 3rd booster to mandatory to staff. That is action that follows policy, not politics.
Doris Grinspun, I'm afraid I have to end it there. I'm sure we could chat all day. I want to thank you for your time. Ms. Grinspun is the CEO of Registered Nurses Association of Ontario. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Before we begin, a warning. Some scenes in this story may excite some viewers. It contains fabulous mansions, flash cars, luxury yachts, all your wildest fantasies come true. What's more, the multimillionaires who own this stuff are just ordinary people. Ordinary people who happen to get lucky, happen to win the big one, the really big one, hundreds of millions of dollars. But, and I'm sorry, there is a but, deep down, are they genuinely happy? Well, let's just say that by the end of this cautionary tale, some of you may be feeling very self-satisfied indeed. Imagine the moment when the stars align and your numbers, the numbers that hold all your dreams, fall into place. Just imagine that feeling. I said, oh, we've got 3 numbers. And I went, hang on a minute, we've got 4. And he said, oh, this will pay for next week and week after's lottery. I said, really, we've got 6. And he said, we haven't. I said, we have. And next they start flashing the numbers across the bottom of the screen, and it's like, I can't remember the numbers, but it was... The time it takes for these balls to drop is the difference between the rest of us and a life less ordinary. For Larry Ross, a few seconds equaled 185 million American dollars. $185 million. Yes, overwhelming amount of money. I mean, beyond the realm of the average person. Well, my spine's tingling just at the very thought of it. Yeah, most people do. We're sitting in this room in an ordinary 3-bedroom house, a normal family with babysitting our granddaughter. And as of now, everything changes forever. Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Battlers Barbara and Ray Ragg from Sheffield in the UK won £7.6 million. Not quite 185 million, but still big bucks. Who'd say no to 20 million Australian dollars? And my sister phoned me and she said, Barbara, are you sure you've got all 6 numbers? So I said, yes, why? She said, well, if you have, you've won 7.6 million, there's only one winner. And I nearly collapsed, didn't I? Oh, my God. I know, can you imagine what it feels like? No, I can't. No, well, I couldn't until then. But it's a feeling of unreality. You know, you feel as though it's like living a dream. It's the dream millions of us share, the dream of the great escape, to tell the boss that he can stick his job because the day on the harbour aboard your brand new boat is far more important. Or you're too busy buying it up big here in one of the world's most exclusive shopping strips, London's Old Bond Street. To be appropriately attired for your new residence. A 15th century 100-room chateau in France. And who cares about the heating bills? What was the day like? Well, basically we were working. There was me and one of the guys in the truck. Infuriatingly, Larry Ross never dreamt of a better life. He built pools for a living and thought the lottery was for mugs, a good way to lose money. So I had no intention of even buying tickets. That wasn't even in my mind. As luck would have it, Larry remembered his wife wanted a couple of tickets in the Mega Millions big game. So I got to the counter and I just came up to the guy and I said, hi, how you doing? Can I get a couple hot dogs? And all I got is this 100, so can you just give me the rest in lottery tickets, easy picks for the big game? Larry let the computer choose the winning numbers, and despite his one-game wonder, has never played again. But has anyone said, look, could you please buy this lottery ticket for me? Yes, I have people come up all the time like this and rub them on their arms and say, buy me this. What we're watching now. I don't... That algorithm. Cool, thanks. What? Yeah! You know what they say about Canada? Land of the woke. liberal la la land, a place where everybody is welcome, but sometimes that facade falls. Fault lines are emerging in Canadian society, and at the center of this divide is the hijab. Our story begins on December the 20th. The Canadian Medical Association Journal published a controversial letter. This was the headline. Don't use an instrument of oppression as a symbol of diversity and inclusion. It was written by a surgeon from Montreal. He was talking about the hijab. He says wearing the hijab is a personal choice, but there is a caveat. Listen to this closely. I'm quoting from what he said. The hijab, the niqab, and the burqa are also instruments of oppression for millions of girls and women around the world who are not allowed to make a choice. Frankly, he's got a point. Every tradition or belief needs context, and that applies to religious symbols as well. Maybe for you, the hijab is a choice. Maybe it's a matter of pride. But elsewhere, perhaps it's not. In places like Iran or Afghanistan, the hijab is not a choice, it is mandatory. Women spend their entire lives hiding their hair, or sometimes their face. Does this sound liberating or oppressing? And I'm not saying the hijab should be abolished. I'm saying we must recognize where it comes from. Islam talks about modesty, not just for women, for men too. But it doesn't talk specifically about a veil or a face covering. So where did the hijab come from? Simple answer, patriarchy. Most religious experts and preachers will tell you that hijabs are mandatory. But most religious experts and preachers have one thing in common. They're all men. The fact is, the hijab is a product of patriarchy. It was indeed a tool to oppress women. In places like Afghanistan, it continues to be.
Once again,
does that mean that government should abolish it? Not quite. In free societies, the hijab may be a choice. You can wear it or not. It's your personal decision. Or so we hope. But the Muslim community in Canada has taken offense. Two major Muslim groups demanded an apology from the Medical Association, and they relented. Not only did they apologize, they also retracted the letter.
Oh, right.
Let me tell you what the journal's editor-in-chief wrote. And I'm quoting again. Islamophobia is a serious health issue.
Yeah.
It kills.
It's retarded.
The letter's title suggests that the hijab is unequivocally an instrument of oppression that is wrong, hurtful, and offensive.
If we're gonna have them here, then we need to figure out.
I get the sentiment. But is this really Islamophobia? This journal clearly defended a woman's right to wear the hijab. At the same time, it questioned the history of wearing it. In other words, one size does not fit all. For you, the hijab may be a choice, elsewhere it's not. That is a fact, by the way, not Islamophobia. So why are Muslim groups up in arms? Perhaps because the atmosphere is changing. Hate crimes against Muslims are rising in Canada. Here's a list from this year alone. 8th June, a Muslim family of 4 was run over by a pickup truck in Ontario.
Because they were outside the mother.
All 4 were killed. 14 July, a mother and daughter were chased by a car in Toronto. Their crime, wearing a hijab. 6th October, a woman's hijab was ripped off her head by another woman in Ottawa. This happened in the middle of the road in broad daylight. 11th December, a Muslim teacher was fired from a job in Quebec, again for wearing a hijab. Islamophobia has always been a feature in Canadian society, by the way, especially since 9/11 in neighboring America. But recently, the hijab has become a lightning rod. So naturally, Canadian Muslims are worried. They believe criticizing the hijab is like criticizing Islam. And you can understand the fears, but you cannot justify them. Much like you can wear a hijab, but not glorify its history. This debate has been going on for some time. Is the hijab oppressive or empowering? I would say it depends on where you live.
Yeah, thank you. You know what?
Maybe in democracies like India or America or Britain, a hijab is part of your identity, which is great, more power to you. But that does not make it perfect. It does not erase the real reason why the hijab was invented. Not as a proud symbol of Islam, but as a tool to oppress women. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.
But if you want to wear one, go ahead and wear one. If you don't, you don't. If you want to fucking wear underpants, wear underpants. I don't give a shit. So everybody do the fucking goddamn job. Safe fucking place, and now I can't remember.
The Chinese dream, a phrase that was used as a slogan in 2012 by the current president of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping. The then newly elected head of the Chinese Communist Party referred to the Chinese dream as the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Xi did not coin this phrase. The origins of the Chinese dream can be traced to ancient Chinese literature. In a poem called Flowing Spring, poet Zhang Sixiao describes waking up in despair after dreaming of the former Western Zhou dynasty. Centuries later, the two words were once again picked up, and this time they were marketed heavily by Xi Jinping. A propaganda blitz that he sold to more than 1 billion people. But 8 years later, Xi's dream seems to be falling apart. Two years into the COVID crisis, the world is still grappling with the deadly Wuhan virus. Nobody can forget these horrific scenes. Many countries, including India, were hit by a series of COVID waves.
Great. Now we know.
The pandemic claimed millions of lives and
Fucking children are icky. People should just like stop having those. And if you can't find, if the birth control doesn't seem like it's going to be available to you anytime soon, maybe you just take them out. Yeah.
Right now, I want to remind everybody about how Omicron presents. This is how, so if you get Omicron, what's it going to do to me? This is what it's going to do to you. Top 5 Zoe reported symptoms. So this is the early London data, right? Most common, runny nose. Second most common, headache. Third most common, fatigue. Sometimes the fatigue was bad, sometimes it was mild. Fourth most common feature, sneezing. Fifth most common feature, sore throat. The implication is obvious. If you have any of these and you've had colds in the past, you're going to think it's a cold, but it may well not be. It may be an Omicron cold. Need to get tested. So that's what we're talking about. And people are getting boosted so they can fight that. People are right now running around with like chickens with their heads cut off over that.
That's what people are afraid of. I'm going to show you it again one more time. What are they afraid of? What are the symptoms?
Top 5
If I
Surrey
get Omicron,
reported,
what am I going to get?
symptoms. So this is the early London data. Right, most common, runny nose.
Oh my God.
Second most common, headache.
I don't want a headache.
Third most common, fatigue. Sometimes
I
the
don't want
fatigue
to
was
get
bad,
tired. I'll have to
sometimes
lay
it was
down.
mild. Fourth most common feature, sneezing. Fifth most common
Gesundheit.
feature, sore throat. The implication is
So-
obvious. If you have any of these and you've had colds in the past, you're going to think it's a cold, but it may well not be. It may be an Omicron cold. Need to get tested.
So if you get Omicron, that's what's going to happen to you most likely. This is from the New York Times. Israel considers fourth vaccine dose to fight this. But some experts say it's premature, you think?
You cannot tell me that there is not a
Some scientists warn that too many shots.
Yeah, there's no.
You ready for this? Some
there's
scientists
not
warn, this is the sub headline.
anywhere
Some
in
scientists
the
warn that
entirety
too
of
many
the world.
shots might actually harm
Okay.
the body's
Whatever.
ability to fight the COVID-19 virus. But Israel experts say there isn't time to wait.
Is it? No.
No, I'm not going. And you're not
So do
going
you
to
see
fucking
what this
truck,
says?
like-
So what
I'm
they're
not going
saying
all the way
is
downstairs in the truck.
some scientists are warning that. So just like Dr. Robert Malone, who just got banned from Twitter today, Dr. Robert Malone, the guy who invented the mRNA vaccine technology, he didn't invent this vaccine. He invented the technology this vaccine is built on. He was on our show a couple of months ago, and he said exactly that. He
I
said
need
that
I need
vaccinations
a
aren't
this is
linear.
Stupid. This is fucking stupid.
it's like if you think
I
it was
need
two is
fucking
good,
drill.
3 will be better, 4th is, but he said it's not, doesn't always work that way. That you could get one and you get a boost and it could have the exact opposite effect, which is what they're saying now, 2 months after he said it on my show. That's what they're saying now. He said it on my show 2 months ago, but people are always saying Jimmy Dore's crazy. Everything I've said, the mainstream media is now starting to say. Israel is considering whether to approve a 4th COVID-19 vaccine dose for vulnerable people to contain the fast-spreading Omicron variant, despite debate among scientists and a lack of evidence. Either for or against there's not enough evidence, but they say just go do it. Why? Because they're bought by big pharma and their tens and tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. Billions, not millions, billions. The panel of experts is advising the Israeli government on the pandemic recognized that uncertainty, but on Tuesday, it recommended to give it a 4th dose friggin' anyway. The panel of experts advising the Israeli government on the pandemic recognized that uncertainty. We don't have enough
I'm not
data.
going anywhere near your truck. So
We don't know exactly what's going to happen. But go ahead. Big Pharma's going to make a ton of money. Let's keep it going.
I don't know. I don't care.
Concluding that the potential benefits outweigh the risk. The benefits of, by the way, remember, the benefits are it's going to protect you from Omicron. Remember I showed you if you get Omicron, what's going to happen to you?
What?
It pointed to signs of waning immunity. The panel. A few months after the 3rd shot, waning immunity after a few months after the 3rd shot, and said that any delay in additional doses might prove too late.
Okay then. Whee! Yay! All right. Well, you're in the room then. I could actually use it. Yes, you are plugged in? Okay. Haha. Because I do things while you're here, so I don't get in trouble. Because I'm not allowed to make sound, and I have to pretend like I don't exist. So that's
Saturday.
Yeah, well, it's just fucking wouldn't want to upset anybody. No. It is Saturday!
Yeah.
Because that matters still. Wait, I just got another piece and I put it. Couldn't. Oh no, because they don't have the material. Couldn't I technically take like a piece of Velcro and like just like stick it onto a piece of sandpaper and poke holes in it? Yeah?
I mean,
That's essentially what this is, right?
sort of, yeah.
I just feel like.
I don't think the dollars or Velcro would be strong enough, though.
We're strong enough.
You're thinking of the little strips, right?
Yeah!
I don't think that would be strong enough.
It's not doing nothing. Like, nothing's going in the container.
I mean, if it worked
Wait.
for a while, but
Yeah,
it couldn't even hold up the remote.
Can you get this off for me, please? The compartment. Oh wait, should I unplug it?
Yes. Always unplug your tools before you do anything with them.
Okay. I'm a woman, so I don't forget anything.
How's this come off? This...
I should just pop off the bottom part. Or you should squeeze the sides, the front and the back.
Oh,
Really?
My arm hurts. No, it's in that.
Maybe it's a screw, actually? Maybe the bottom piece screws on? I'm wrong? No, don't break it! You're gonna break it! Please don't break it!
I'm just trying to squeeze the pieces right here that I think are the pieces that you squeeze.
Yeah, but like, if not... Because you're gonna break it.
You're the one that's fucking doing that. I'm pretty sure you just gotta squeeze it.
No, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, you want me to close this?
Yep.
Let me check.
Fuck. I'm so like puzzles for fun food.
Try on my other end. Sure it's not this that comes off?
That's what I just said. I think that might screw us, but like now I can feel the face of it moving.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that how you break it?
No.
You fuck at the fucking
There you
front
go.
face part?
Oh, that's how you do it. See? It clips on like that. You got it.
You got it.
I wish I had snacks.
You can still go and buy snacks. Crazy story. Why the fuck? Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, I must be thinking of a tool that I dreamt of once. I don't know. Maybe I'm like sleeping with other tools at night. Fucking two-time tool whore. Fucking fuck your tool. Fuck. Okay, come on. Get back on. Oh, I can't. I'm a cripple. I can't help it. Okay, wait. I think we got it. Ow! Okay, we're good. We have a lack of 12 days ago. Top news.
Mrs. B, you mentioned we're at about 50% of our COVID hospital beds that are used up right now.
Of course not.
Can you explain to the best that you can what happens if we hit our overall capacity and where we can find more beds and whether or not we should expect cuts in services?
Well, I think as I explained, as you know, it's not really the number of beds, but the number of
I can't even turn you
health
off.
workers that can service those beds. And our key problem right now, as you know,
Get the fuck off my fucking screen. Fuck you. Fucking gross. You're so fat. Go for a jog, sir. I know that you don't want to go outside, but because fucking hockey is fucking gonna be happening, so hockey or die. Cop orders. Well, yeah.
It's a raccoon attack.
Did you say the raccoon ass? Thanks. The world's largest jellyfish. Oh, that's my childhood dream.
She's like, I can't get enough of that.
I just. Oh my god.
Pandemic was an accelerator when it comes to the killing of women in their home because they were trapped with the perpetrator. At least 18 women were killed by their partners in 2021 in Quebec, marking the highest number in years. Midway through the year, the provincial government sprung into action with funding and measures, but experts say the key will be to harmonize them and work on prevention in 2022. We had to go through the killing of women. We had to go through we had to see kids losing their mother, sometimes their parent, the both parents sometimes. 40, I think there are 40 children without a mother right now. The pandemic was a factor in the increase in violence, experts say. It was impossible for women to leave the abusive relationship because it was extremely complicated because of the virus and the pandemic and the sanitary measures in place, but also because it was like impossible to get access to resources. There are not enough places in shelters. There are not enough second stage shelter as well. In the spring, Quebec announced the investment of $222 million over 5 years to combat violence against women in the province, and the promise to build 236 second stage housing shelters, the next step after being placed in an emergency shelter. $9.1 million will be used to create intervention units for abused women, which would gather specialized workers to act in crisis situations. For me, is a key thing, because like people, professional, they have the opportunity to work together very fast to put in place, everything that is needed. Despite efforts, organizations say there's still a lot of work to do in 2022. Again, there's some, area that are pretty gray or unclear. So it's important that police forces receive a proper training to be able to intervene. Right?
I could fucking care less. Fuck the cops. They're useless. They only cause a bunch of fucking issues.
This is a video about things like cars, phones, and light bulbs, and an actual conspiracy that made them worse. This video was sponsored by NordVPN. More about them at the end of the video. I am outside Livermore Fire Station number 6. And in here, they have the longest continuously on light bulb in the world. It has been on for 120 years, since 1901. There it is, huh? It's not even connected to a light switch, but it does have a backup battery and generator. So the big question is, how has this light bulb lasted so long? It was manufactured by hand not long after commercial light bulbs were first invented. And yet, it has been running for over 1 million hours, way longer than any light bulb today is meant to last. A while back, a friend of mine told me this story, that someone had invented a light bulb that would last forever, years ago. But they never sold it because an everlasting light bulb makes for a terrible business model. I mean, you would never have any repeat customers, and eventually you would run out of people to sell light bulbs to. I thought this story sounded ridiculous. If you could make an everlasting light bulb, then everyone would buy your light bulb over the competitors. And so you could charge really high prices, make a lot of money, even if demand would eventually dry up. I just couldn't imagine that we had better light bulbs in the past and then intentionally made them worse. But it turns out I was wrong. At least, sort of. Inventing a viable electric light was hard. I mean, this is the typical incandescent design, which just involves passing electric current through a material, making it so hot that it glows. You know, less than 5% of the electrical energy comes out as light. The other 95% is released as heat. So these are really heat bulbs, which give off a little bit of light as a byproduct. And the temperature of the filament can get up to 2800 Kelvin. That is half as hot as the surface of the sun. At temperatures like those, most materials melt. And if they don't melt, they burn. Which is why in the 1840s, Warren de la Rue came up with the idea of putting the filament in a vacuum bulb so there's no oxygen to react with. By 1879, Thomas Edison had made a bulb with a cotton thread filament that lasted 14 hours. Other inventors created bulbs with platinum filaments or other carbonized materials, and gradually the lifespan of bulbs increased. The filaments changed from carbon to tungsten, which has a very high melting point, and by the early 1920s, average bulb lifetimes were approaching 2,000 hours, with some lasting 2,500 hours. But this is when lifetimes stopped getting longer and started getting shorter. In Geneva, Switzerland, just before Christmas 1924, there was a secret meeting of top executives from the world's leading light bulb companies. Philips, International General Electric, Tokyo Electric, Osram from Germany, and the UK's Associated Electric, among others. They formed what became known as the Phoebus Cartel, named after Phoebus, the Greek god of light. There, all these companies agreed to work together to help each other by controlling the world's supply of light bulbs. In the early days of the electrical industry, there had been lots of different small light bulb manufacturers, but by now, they had largely been consolidated into these big corporations, each dominant in a particular part of the world.
Whoa.
The biggest threat they all faced was from longer-lasting light bulbs. For example, in 1923, Osram sold 63 million light bulbs, but the following year, they sold only 28 million. Light bulbs were lasting too long, eating into sales. So all the companies in the cartel agreed to reduce the lifespan of their bulbs to 1,000 hours, cutting the existing average almost in half. But how could each company ensure that the other companies would actually follow the rules and make shorter lasting light bulbs? After all, it would be in each of their individual interests to make a better product to outsell the others. Well, to enforce the 1,000-hour limit, each of the manufacturers had to send in sample bulbs from their factories, and they were tested on big test stands like this one. If a bulb lasted significantly longer than 1,000 hours, then the company was fine. If a bulb lasted longer than 3,000 hours, well, the fine was 200 Swiss francs for every 1,000 bulbs sold. And there are records of these fines being issued to companies. But how do you make a worse light bulb in the first place? Well, the same engineers who had previously been tasked with extending the lifespan now had to find ways to decrease it. So they tried different materials, different shaped filaments, and thinner connections. And if you look at the data, they were successful. Ever since the formation of the cartel, the lifespan of light bulbs steadily decreased, so that by 1934, the average lifespan was just 1,205 hours. And just as they had planned, sales increased for cartel members by 25% in the 4 years after 1926. And even though the cost of components came down, the cartel kept prices virtually unchanged, so they increased their profit margins. So, did people know that the light bulb companies were conspiring together to make their products worse? No. The Phoebus cartel claimed that its purpose was to increase standardization and efficiency of light bulbs. I mean, they did establish this screw thread as standard. You can find it on virtually all light bulbs around the world now. But all evidence points to the cartels being motivated by profits and increased sales, not by what was best for consumers. So, one of the reasons this light bulb has lasted so long is because it was made before the cartel era. Another reason is because the filament has always been run at low power, just 4 or 5 watts. It was meant to be a night light for the fire station, to provide just enough light so that firemen wouldn't run into things at night. And the fact that it was always on reduced the thermal cycling of the filament and components, limiting the stress caused by contraction. The Phoebus cartel was initially planned to last at least until 1955, but it fell apart in the 1930s. It was already struggling due to outside competition and non-compliance among some of its members, but the outbreak of World War II is really what finished it off. So this cartel was dead, but its methods survived to this day. There are lots of companies out there that intentionally shorten the lifespan of their products. It's a tactic known now as planned obsolescence. This was actually the subject of Casey Neistat's first viral video, all the way back in 2003. Thank you for calling Apple. My name's Ryan. May I have your first name, please? Casey. All right. What seems to be the issue there? I have an iPod that I bought about 18 months ago, and the battery is dead on it. 18 months. Okay, it's been a year, which basically means for it'll just charge them $255 plus a mailing fee to send it to us to refurb it, to correct it. But at that price, might as well go get it going. This video got millions of views in a time before YouTube or social media, and it spawned a class action lawsuit which Apple settled out of court. But it didn't stop the company from practicing planned obsolescence. After an iOS update in 2017, users of older iPhones found apps loading significantly slower or the device shutting down altogether. Apple said they throttled performance to protect the battery of older devices and increase their longevity. Of course, that wouldn't be an issue if the battery were replaceable. In a series of lawsuits that concluded in 2020, Apple was fined or breached settlements to pay hundreds of millions of dollars. Undoubtedly, this amount pales in comparison to the extra revenue they generate by limiting the lifespan of their products. But some would argue that planned obsolescence isn't just about greed, but it's also good for everyone. During the Great Depression in the 1930s, when as much as a quarter of Americans were out of work, an American real estate broker, Bernard London, proposed mandatory planned obsolescence as a way to get people back to work and lift America out of the Depression. He wrote, "I would have the government assign a lease of life to shoes and homes and machines when they are first created. And they would be sold and used within the term of their existence, definitely known by the consumer. After the allotted time had expired, these things would be legally dead and would be controlled by the duly appointed governmental agency and destroyed if there is widespread unemployment." Now, this might sound like a wild, fringe idea, but people were clearly afraid of being put out of work by technological progress and products that were too good. There was even a popular Oscar-nominated film about it. This is The Man in the White Suit from 1951. It's about a scientist who invents the perfect fiber. It won't stain or break or fray.
I think I've succeeded in the copolymerization of amino acid residues and carbohydrate molecules, both containing ionic groups. It's really perfectly simple.
The Academy Award nomination was for Best Screenplay.
You should start charging by the hour.
I kid you not. Anyway, everyone is initially excited about our hero's scientific discovery. He makes a suit out of the thread, and it has to be white because the fiber is so stain resistant it can't even be dyed. But this is when trouble strikes. The factory owners realize they won't be able to sell as much of this thread because it's so durable. And the workers worry it'll put them out of a job.
Why can't you scientists leave things alone? What about my bit of washing when there's no washing to do?
This is when you get the climactic scene where factory workers and factory owners team up to chase down the scientist to destroy him and his invention. And believe it or not, this movie may have been inspired by real events. In the 1940s, the synthetic fiber nylon replaced silk in stockings, and it was so durable that the products became an overnight sensation. There were literal riots when women tried to get their hands on them. When the manufacturers realized they had made the product too good, they didn't destroy fiber, but they did follow the example of the Phoebus cartel. They instructed their engineers and scientists to find ways to weaken the product, to shorten its lifespan, so people would have to buy more. Now, it seems like consumers are finally fighting back against planned obsolescence. In the European Union and in over 25 states in the US, there's proposed legislation to enshrine the right to repair. These laws would force manufacturers to make it easier to repair their products. They would have to provide information and access to parts, so you could replace a battery or fix a cracked screen at a third-party repair shop without voiding your warranty. So, if the right to repair does become law, does that mean artificial obsolescence will be gone for good? Sadly, no, because there is one last thing manufacturers can use to make their products obsolete, which is you. Henry Ford released the first mass-market car, the Model T, in 1908, and he envisioned it like a workhorse, an affordable tool that wouldn't wear out, a bit like the everlasting light bulb. In 1922, Ford said, "We want the man who buys one of our cars never to have to buy another. We never make an improvement that renders any previous model obsolete." But by 1920, 55% of American families already owned a car. Nearly everyone that could afford one had one. And that same year, there was a small economic downturn driving down sales for both Ford and General Motors. In 1921, DuPont, the chemical and paint company, took over the controlling share in General Motors. And they started experimenting with painting cars different colors. Up until then, Henry Ford had said, you could have whatever color you like, so long as it's black. It took a couple of years of testing, but in 1924, GM released their first cars in different colors. And soon after, they introduced a trick that feels very familiar now. Each new year, they would introduce cars in different colors. The goal wasn't just to make Ford's Model T look outdated, but to make their own cars feel outdated every year, encouraging customers to trade in their old cars for shiny new ones. Years later, GM's head of design, Harley Earl, candidly discussed his role in creating what he called dynamic obsolescence. Our big job is to hasten obsolescence. In 1934, the average car ownership span was 5 years. Now, which was 1955, it is 2 years. When it is 1 year, we will have a perfect score. By the time he said this, General Motors was the most valuable company in the world, and it sold half of all vehicles purchased in the U.S. every year. These days, the world's most valuable company, Apple, seems to have copied directly out of this playbook. New styles every year? Check. New special colors every year? Check. Marginal technological improvement? Check. Is this useful innovation or just a gimmick? The inspiration for General Motors, and hence for Apple, comes from fashion, where real innovation is all but impossible. So the only way to make people feel the urgency to get out there and buy is to create styles that last but one season. The trouble then is you run through these styles too quickly, and then what are you supposed to do? Well, just recycle the styles from a few decades ago. The iPhone also shows this recycling trend. I mean, just look at the way the edges were initially rounded, and then they were squared off, and then they were rounded again, and now they're squared off. And how much do you want to bet that the iPhone 14 has rounded edges? I think the point is that with design and styling, there is no best. There's only different, which is apparently enough to remind us that we don't have the latest and greatest, and so we have to rush out and keep buying. The only type of obsolescence we should support is technological, which brings us back to the light bulb. You know, in the last 20 years, light bulbs have gone from incandescent, which was basically unchanged for 100 years, to compact fluorescent, and now to LED. These use just a tenth of the energy and can last anywhere from 10 to 50 times longer. That's pretty bright. So you're more likely to sell your house than to have to replace an LED bulb that you've installed inside it. So we've finally reached the point of what is essentially an everlasting light bulb. Hey, this video was sponsored by NordVPN. You know, I am featured in an episode of the British TV program QI. It's a show I really like, and I'd highly recommend it if you haven't seen it already. And it's on Netflix, but only if you're in the UK. I feel like TV and film are still trapped in antiquated business models where they divide up the world into broadcast territories. That doesn't make a lot of sense now that information can flow freely through the internet. Luckily, using NordVPN, anyone can set their location to the UK and watch whatever they like. If you're interested in seeing what streamers have to offer in different countries, you can get a huge discount on a 2-year plan at nordvpn.com/Veritasium. Use code Veritasium to get an extra month free. And using NordVPN, you can also protect your privacy by masking your IP address. In fact, you can change your IP twice to cover your web traffic with an extra layer of security. NordVPN has a no-logs policy. They don't track, collect, or share your private data, which is what a lot of the world's biggest companies are trying to do right now. So for privacy when browsing and access to all the shows the world has to offer, go to nordvpn.com/Veritasium for a huge discount off a 10-year plan. Use code Veritasium to get 1 additional month free. And this is all risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So I want to thank NordVPN for sponsoring Veritasium, and I want to thank you for watching. Part of this video was sponsored by LastPass. Stick around to the end for a word from our sponsor. Are negative ions good for you? Normally, I dismiss such a question out of hand. In fact, that's exactly what I did when a friend brought it up about a month ago. But he was insistent. He said, no, this is for real. There's science behind it. And so I looked into it, and I found this. There are literally hundreds of published peer-reviewed scientific studies on the biological effects of ions. It's a body of research that begins about a century ago and continues to the present day. And this is just a fraction of it. Now, these studies aren't just about any old ions. They're about atmospheric ions or air ions. And although the results are not uniform, they all begin with the premise that positive ions make us feel bad and negative ions make us feel good. So in this video, I want to get to the bottom of this. These are Himalayan salt lamps. And the heat from the light bulb, it releases negative ions into the air. And of course, negative ions are what you breathe in and produces serotonin in the body. And serotonin is like the primary neurotransmitter in your whole body and all living things. And that's what makes you feel good. Awesome. Can I jump in here for a second? When I first heard all this business about atmospheric ions, my first thought was, why should we expect there to be many ions in the atmosphere at all? I mean, to recap, an ion is just an atom or a molecule that has gained or lost an electron. If it loses an electron, it's a positive ion. If it gains an electron, it becomes a negative ion. But here's the thing. Unlike charges attract. So moving about in the atmosphere, I'd expect the positive and negative ions to find each other, and then boom, they're back to being neutral. However, as it turns out, there are some processes that are constantly generating atmospheric ions. For example, cosmic rays. These are highly energetic particles from across the universe that slam into our atmosphere and transfer their energy to the air, creating ions in the process. Cosmic rays are thought to create around 500 ions per cubic centimeter at ground level. In fact, they're the most significant source of ions generated over the oceans. But here on land, there are other sources of ionization, things like natural radioactivity. There are these long-lived isotopes of uranium and thorium, and their decay products that can spit out highly energetic particles in the form of alpha, beta, and gamma rays. These ionize the air, and they vary widely from place to place, but they can contribute hundreds up to many thousands of ions per cubic centimeter. If you were to recommend one of these to me that has the most negative ions, or which one do you think? I would just go for which one caused. Yeah. Is this the heat from the light bulb that creates the heat which makes the reaction in the substance? Wow, this one's great. Yeah. This would just be perfect. And then you have thunderstorms. Each lightning strike generates copious amounts of ions. Perhaps one of the more surprising sources of negative ions is waterfalls. As water droplets collide with each other or with wetted surfaces with high velocity, the water molecules create this electrified spray with negative ions that can be transferred to the air around it. Depending on your distance from the waterfall, ion levels can reach tens of thousands of ions per cubic centimeter, and the same effect occurs with ocean waves crashing on shore. Hello. Hi, Derek. Hey, good. Can I give you that? Sure. So what I want to know is how many negative ions are there coming off that lamp when it's on? We have a technique involving mass spectrometry that measures negative ions coming off of solids, and so we can give it a try. Are you an ion expert? I've been studying ions for 55 years. Whoa. And I've written hundreds of papers on all aspects of ions. So this is my salt lamp. It's meant to give us lots of negative ions. Can you tell me whether it's giving us some negative ions? We're going to have a look. And the thing we're utilizing here is that the inlet to this mass spectrometer is at atmospheric pressure. If there's ions there, we'll be able to detect them. So this is like, is it kind of like an electronic nose or something? For ions. You can think of it as a node for ions. Yeah, okay. It's next to the ions. Okay. The lamp is next to the ion sampling cone. I mean, it's not on yet, but we see if there's any ions coming from it now. So this display here, this is our mass to charge axis here. So how heavy they are in molecular weight essentially. And if there's ions being formed, we're going to see some signal on this. Maybe it's like some peaks. Some peaks, yeah. Now, does it need to warm up, or? I think that's the idea. Yeah. Now, there are some places that do naturally have lower concentrations of ions, namely the interiors of houses and businesses, because these structures provide some shielding from the cosmic rays and from the natural radioactivity. Plus, if you have metal ducting and air conditioning, well, some of those charged ions will get stuck in the ducts. So typically levels inside homes and businesses can be as low as around 100 or 200 ions per cubic centimeter. Ion concentrations are also typically lower in polluted areas, in big cities or around factories. And that's because the ions actually cling to those pollutants or the aerosols, and so they don't live as long in the atmosphere. So the assertion that we live in environments with fewer ions than our ancestors is true. If you're thinking that you feel better around waterfalls and oceans and after thunderstorms than you do in polluted cities or around big factories, well, maybe that's the reason why scientists have been studying the effects of negative ions on human health for nearly a century. So let's consider the evidence. In one study, people suffering from seasonal affective disorder were randomly assigned to one of three treatment groups: bright light therapy, high concentrations of negative ions, or low concentrations of negative ions. They found that both bright light therapy and high-density negative ions independently produced antidepressant effects, but not low-density ions. In another study, participants in a high-density negative ion environment had significantly faster reaction times and reported being more energetic than those in an ambient air control. Now, if all this sounds too subjective, EEG experiments show people exposed to high-density negative ions had a slower alpha wave frequency with higher amplitude. Participants also reported increased relaxation, alertness, and improved working capacity. And opposite results have been found with positive ions. In one study, volunteers were exposed to high concentrations of positive ions for 2 hours. Symptoms of anxiety and excitement significantly increased. During the time of exposure, serum serotonin levels also increased significantly. This has even been taken into real-world work environments. An air ionizer was fitted to the air conditioning unit in an office building and periodically turned on and off over 12 weeks. When the ionizer pumping out negative ions, workers reported 50% fewer headaches. They also reported increased alertness, perceived atmospheric freshness, and environmental and personal warmth. It's feeling pretty hot. It's been on for an hour. Yeah. So the question is, can a salt lamp generate negative ions? Well, let's check for negative ions. Let's look again. Doesn't look like it. But, I mean, there's not even like a background. No, there's not. It's just like it's not even sitting there. So your conclusion after testing this device is that it's producing no negative ions. We're certainly not able to detect any negative ions. The answer for these salt lamps are meant to create negative ions is that water molecules are meant to land on the surface and liberate chloride ions from the lattice. But ask any chemist who works with their salt, and they'll tell you the energy required to do this is way too high, so it just doesn't happen. What I find ironic is that there are crystals which, when heated, will produce ions. It's just that salt doesn't have the right crystal structure to make this work. The gemstone tourmaline does. Some samples are worth 3,000 of dollars. Tourmaline has a structure such that if you cause it to expand, it will actually develop an electric charge on the faces of the crystal. You have discharges between those faces break down in the air and forming ions. And that charge then can be transferred to any organic molecule that's present in the air. 5-degree change is enough to generate ions. I just find this extraordinary that there is a crystal, there is a material that you could heat up and create negative ions. So the reason people wouldn't have tourmaline lamps is because tourmaline's just really expensive. Okay, so we didn't get any ions off of the salt lamp, but I brought something along that I think might give us some ions. This is an ionic air purifier. When this product was first launched, it sold to 2 million units. It works by using high voltage to ionize the air and accelerate those ions to produce the light breeze you can feel without any moving parts. Okay, I feel great. And that should be going into the nozzle. We've got it pointed right at our ion inlet. So that's good. We seem to be seeing some ions at the moment. We have the ionic breeze right up next to the source. So these are negative ions. These are negative ions. So if you want negative ions, what you need in your house is not a salt lamp. It's an ionic air purifier. Before you rush out to buy one, I should warn you that generating these ions produces an unfortunate byproduct, ozone. So right now we're measuring about 17 parts per billion, actually, of ozone. So let's put this up to the front and see whether or not we see an increase in the amount of ozone. Jump over the... And now I think we're actually at the level of a small area. So you're saying that this device is creating air that would be considered smog in a city? I believe so. That is kind of ridiculous for something that's going to purify the air. Can you smell it, Ozone? Yeah. Whoa. Does it trouble you? Oh, it doesn't bother me. I know I want to either leave the tab or turn it off. What am I smelling for now? Oh yeah. Let's smell. Oh yeah. That's all those things? Yeah. People like that smell, but if you smell that, it's not good. But perhaps we should shut this off before we execute ourselves. So, generating clean negative ions is challenging. But is it even worth the effort? The research is inconsistent. They don't seem to make a difference. Evidence for beneficial effects of negative ions on human performance could not be demonstrated. Of the studies that report significant results, many have methodological problems. In some, participants weren't blinded to the treatment they were receiving. When they were blinded, they may still have known when negative ions were present by the faint smell of ozone. Most of the studies have very small sample sizes. Plus, they surveyed participants on a number of measures, increasing the likelihood that at least one would show a significant difference, just due to random chance. Ion levels were typically measured at the source, and the distance to subjects was not tightly controlled, nor were the other components of the air. So there's no guarantee that participants were even receiving the expected levels of ions. A meta-analysis from 2013 reviewing all the prior human ion studies concluded there was, quote, no consistent influence of positive or negative air ionization on anxiety, mood, relaxation, sleep, and personal comfort measures. The only link they found was between negative air ionization and lower depression scores, though the authors cautioned future research is needed to evaluate the biological plausibility of this association. Because fundamentally, the idea that ions have any biological effect is implausible. Consider that in a cubic centimeter of air, there are 10 to the 19 air molecules. So even with tens of thousands of ions, the amount is insignificant, not even 1 part per billion. We're talking parts per million billion. And there's no reason to suspect the extra electrons would do anything anyway. I mean, in your daily life, you're constantly building up charge on your skin and discharging it through little zaps. Say when you touch a doorknob. What are a few more stray electrons extracellular going to do? Yeah. Probably not much. So if ions do anything, it would likely be indirectly, say by removing pollutants and odors from the air. The ions would cling to the chemicals, and then they would, say, get attracted to surfaces. Surfaces and then stick to the surface, the chemicals stay on the surface. So I think ultimately, if you are looking for a way to improve your mental and physical health that is backed by strong scientific evidence, then you should take a walk outside. I mean, you can walk near a waterfall or near the ocean if you like, but the thing that is proven to boost your mood is the exercise. And as an added bonus, you're guaranteed to get some fresh air. Hey, this episode was sponsored by LastPass. You know, I remember the very first password I ever created. It was a PIN for an ATM card, and I was told I could select 4 numbers or spell out a word using the letters underneath. So I picked WORD. Word. Easy to remember? Sure. Secure? Not so much. And today, many of us still do this. Pick passwords that are easy to remember rather than ones that are secure. So you need a password manager. With LastPass, you get unlimited password storage, password breach alerts, and free cross-device sync. One thing I particularly like is if other people ever need access to your accounts, you can safely and easily share passwords. LastPass autofills your credentials on mobile sites and apps for iOS and Android. When you open an app or site, LastPass will fill in your username and password so you'll never get locked out again. With LastPass, you don't have to write, remember, or reset passwords. LastPass keeps track of your passwords easily so you don't have to. Put your passwords on autopilot with LastPass. Click on the link below to find out more about LastPass. And thanks to LastPass for sponsoring today's show. Now, you may have seen this thumbnail on YouTube. I mean, I can actually basically guarantee that YouTube has been shoving this in your face, like, click it again. So you might be wondering why. Why did this video in particular go viral? Well, that is what I'm going to set out to explain in this video. But I'm going to start with something that seems unrelated, which is YouTuber burnout. Now, there's no secret, there have been a lot of YouTubers recently talking about burnout. People like Casey Neistat, Superwoman, Ryan Higa, Grace Helbig, and many, many, many more. And I think when you have all of these people with different YouTube channels, different experiences, they're all saying something similar. I think it's worth understanding that there may be sort of a common factor at play amongst all of them. So what I'm actually going to present is a kind of theory of everything when it comes to YouTube. Everything from YouTuber burnout through to videos going viral. Why do videos go viral on the platform right now? Okay, so, I think as a viewer, your response to burnout might be to say, well, these YouTubers are just entitled, or they're soft, or, hoo-hoo, you have the best job in the world. Or your other response might be that burnout happens in every industry. So why should we care about this YouTuber thing? But I think that YouTuber burnout is a more specific phenomenon. I think there's something particular going on here. And it all starts with the YouTuber life cycle. I mean, if you think about a YouTuber who's complaining about burnout, they've had some success on the platform where their views are rising. And of course, that's exhilarating. It feels great. And you're working pretty hard, but you're seeing it pay off. And then at some point, your views start to falter. So maybe you work a little bit harder, but things don't really change. And the views, continue to fall. I think there's a certain thing to do with the psychology of anchoring here. Once you have a certain number of subscribers, then, 100,000 views, which might be amazing in the beginning, feels like a horrible disappointment. So there's a real problem between sort of expectations and reality. And to me, this is a big part of why YouTuber burnout happens. Now, if you look at what the YouTubers are saying about this, you find that a lot of them are taking responsibility themselves. And they're also making some clear cause and effect relationships, which, kind of seem to make sense. Okay, so this idea, we assume that views reflect something about video quality. We kind of make that assumption. And so when there are, fewer views taking place, that means the video is lower quality. This is just kind of, I think, instinctive. But I want to question that. I also want to question these YouTubers who essentially put the blame on themselves and say, they're just not making as good videos anymore. To me, I think there's something else at play, and it is the system. So from time to time, I like to go over to Google Trends, where you can basically search any search term and see how much traffic there is, how many people are searching that term at any given time. And if you search for Veritasium, basically since 2004, you see, this kind of curve, which might make you ask the question, where on the YouTuber life cycle do you think I am? And of course, this little spike here is from my black hole videos. This over here must be some Harry Potter fans who are bad at spelling. So this is how much people are searching for me, which I think kind of correlates to, how much my videos are being shown on YouTube and how much people are watching them and enjoying them. Now let's look at a similar channel for comparison. How about the channel Number File? It's also an educational channel, but it's, we're very different, made by very different people and with very different schedules, very different topics that we've tackled. And yet these graphs look pretty similar. Let me have a look at one more. So this is the ASAP Science curve. So here you have Veritasium, Number File, and ASAP Science, 3 educational YouTube channels, which all follow a fairly similar pattern on Google Trends. So my question is, why is this? Why should we follow a similar trend? Well, the obvious answer is the algorithm. And the algorithm has a very important job, because in traditional media, there are not that many works produced. I mean, in American theaters last year, there were about 800 films. 800 films, that's it. On TV, there were 500 scripted TV shows. But when it comes to YouTube, it doesn't even compare. I mean, I don't even think that they advertise the number of hundreds of hours uploaded every minute. The obvious analogy is that you're really just seeing the tip of the iceberg. But in the case of icebergs, you see, almost 10% of the ice above the surface. In the case of YouTube, you're seeing just the tip of 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 the iceberg. Basically, statistically speaking, you are ignorant of everything on YouTube. And yet, YouTube claims that they have this algorithm, which you can think of like the brain of the platform, that can connect an audience that knows almost nothing of what's on the platform to the particular types of content they like.
Right.
And in the best case, YouTube would argue that the algorithm is basically the audience. You know, the audience decides what they want to watch, and the algorithm is just reflecting that. But of course, we are not in this ideal world, and the audience itself is always kind of shifting and changing who they are and what they like to watch. And so the algorithm you can think of as following the audience. The algorithm is chasing this audience around and trying to reach them. Now, what YouTube doesn't much consider is that, well, the YouTube creators use their content to try to chase the algorithm. So these YouTubers who would love to be creating content about, you know, whatever they're most passionate about in whatever way, they also see what's popular on the site and they try to make content that will please the algorithm. And so there's a way in which the content is chasing the algorithm is chasing the audience. And if the content actually manages to catch up with the algorithm, you get a kind of perverse situation in which the algorithm is the content. I mean, what do I mean by that? Just a crazy thought experiment. If YouTube wanted more videos of snails, they could make that happen. They don't actually have to go out and make any snail videos. If they just, you know, promoted videos with snail in the title, tomorrow there's going to be a whole bunch on the front page and trending, and then creators be like, oh, snails are the new thing, and they're going to go make a bunch of videos about snails. YouTube would love to believe that creators don't care about the algorithm, but they do. It's like the core aspect of how creators decide what content to make. Just as a more down-to-earth example, I can show you a graph of the length of my videos from 2011 through to today. And what you see is at the beginning, all of my videos average about 2 or 3 minutes in length. But these days, I'm fast approaching an average length of video of 10 minutes. Now, YouTube never came to me and said, Derek, you have to make longer videos. All they said was, well, videos that are longer and get longer watch time will be promoted more on the site. So people like myself and, you know, all the other creators who wanted to be seen, we made longer videos. It's just what we did. Now, we know that the algorithm is always changing. They're always trying to optimize it, make it work better. But they also change what it's trying to optimize for. In the beginning, it was simple, just views. But they quickly figured out that, of course, like a 20-minute view is worth a lot more than a 5-second view. So the actual metric should be watch time. And this was advantageous to people like gamers because people like to watch people play video games for long periods of time. They also reduced the latency of the algorithm, by which I mean it updates every 10 minutes instead of, say, every day. And that's beneficial for news content, things that are really time sensitive. And to me, as a YouTuber, be an expert on YouTube. If you look at what it takes to become an expert at anything, according to the Nobel Prize winning economist Daniel Kahneman, you need, of course, many hours of practice, effortful, deliberate practice. And on YouTube, I would argue we get that. You also need timely feedback. And we're given plenty of tools to be able to see how our videos are performing. But when it comes to a reliable environment, this is an environment in which the rules of the game aren't changing. So you can think of something like chess. It's possible to be a chess expert because in the middle of a game of chess, the rules don't suddenly change on you. Now, on YouTube, that is algorithm. It's kind of impossible to be experts, and instead, we're a little bit more like caged pigeons. Okay, go with me on this. There was this famous experiment where, you know, pigeons were put in a cage with a lever, and if they pushed the lever, then they would get some food. And so they very quickly learned that they needed to push the lever and the food would come out. So that's fine. But in another part of the experiment, they disconnected the lever from the food output, and they just supplied food into the cage kind of at random. And what did the pigeons do? Well, they started to do the types of behaviors that they were doing when the food appeared. So if one was preening itself, then it would keep preening itself with the expectation that food was coming. And this one, maybe it was pecking the ground. So The point being, they started to engage in these superstitious behaviors because they had related some sort of cause and effect, but there actually wasn't a cause effect there. And to me, this partly explains the whole YouTube burnout phenomenon, because you have these creators who are stretching themselves to try to chase that algorithm. Meanwhile, the algorithm is constantly shifting, and so you never feel like an expert and never quite know what's going on, even though you're constantly trying to relate cause and effect. Now, I can understand why the algorithm has to change. I mean, in the early days of YouTube, it was this situation where if you had subscribers, you were golden, because the next time you uploaded some content, then YouTube would show it to all your subscribers. It would get a ton of views. YouTube would say, oh, this is a popular video, show it to even more people, getting you even more subscribers. So the next time you launch another video, then it goes to more subscribers, more views. And it was just this positive feedback loop where you would grow and grow and grow a channel. So the rich got richer and small channels stayed small. So obviously we needed something to break the cycle. And so YouTube started doing some experiments where they would essentially, change what was recommended to your audience. So they would stop showing some of the content from certain subscribers, and they saw what happened to views. So they started really disconnecting these subscribers from the channel. No longer was a subscription like, I want to see every video by this person. It was more of like a suggestion that maybe something this person creates is something I might like to see. And what YouTube found when they did that was that the number of views on the platform, the amount of watch time, all rose dramatically. So for YouTube to get growth of the site, they found that reducing the importance of subscriptions was essential. And this kind of makes sense if you think about it. I mean, if you make one great video, that doesn't necessarily mean that every video you're going to make is going to be great. So it makes sense for YouTube to step in and play some role in terms of determining what gets shown to which audience members. Now, as has been observed by Matt Pat previously, moving away from subscriptions moves YouTube back to what it was like to sell newspapers on the street. You really had to inspire people to buy on the spot. You have to serve up really sensational news items. This is also called yellow journalism. It was only once the newspapers built subscription models that, newspapers could make sober journalism a reality, something that they focused on, because they already had your eyeballs. They didn't have to fight for that sort of attention. They didn't have to be as sensational. But YouTube is going in the opposite direction. Reducing the importance of subscribers means increasing the importance of sensationalism and clickbaity thumbnails. And so a few weeks ago, I was out at the Creator Summit in New York, and I met Mr. Beast. I showed him some of the footage from this video I was working on about the shade balls in LA Reservoir. And Mr. Beast took one look at it, and he said to me, "That's a banger." Which I think is pretty funny, but I think clearly he knew that this was going to be a video that would take off. And we talked about titles and thumbnails. You might have noticed that the thumbnail borrows a bit from, say, his work with cereal and Orbeez in backyards. And I told him that I was thinking about calling it something like Throwing Shade Balls. And he was like, no. He suggested, why are there 96 million black balls on this lake? Now, I changed it to reservoir because, let's be real, that's what it is. But it just goes to show how important the title and thumbnail are. What I learned talking to Mr. Beast was that going viral, you can boil down to two metrics. You need to do two things with your video in order for it to go viral, and I mean tens of millions of views, as his channel shows. Okay, the first thing,
you're so protective.
maybe not so...
I know big words.
Making a burger tonight, and I'm gonna be a happy burger man, and I'm gonna make burgers for everyone with smiles and bacon and all that sort of thing. Everybody's gonna love my burgers, and it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great. There's gonna be ball pits, and there's gonna be edible onions, salami, and sour cream, and they're gonna
Is this your life?
topping cream and topping bits, and they're gonna be like little animals, and they're gonna be like ooh, ooh, ooh.
And then the turtle. And then that's what you sound like.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I know. I was hoping you were listening.
Always listening, unfortunately.
You know?
You woke up my dog. Now you have to deal with him.
I ain't doing shit.
What do you want from me? What do you want
Nothing.
from
I
me?
was just giving you loving kisses.
Yeah.
What?
After being mean to me for an entire day.
You're mean to
No,
me
come
all the time.
on.
What?
Fuck.
He's not doing nothing.
No, but now I'm gonna end up stepping on him or kicking him by accident.
Oh my god, is that why you went, come on? He didn't do nothing. He's innocent.
What are you doing? I really, really enjoy when my fucking computer is just
I did there and then. Not only did I not come back a cowboy, I came back a vegetarian. Unbelievable. I'd say that was 2.5 years ago. That is a decision that has made my life absolutely shitter. Every day, every meal now, even ones that didn't used to have meat on, like cornflakes. I just think, oh, this would be lovely with a bit of veal on it. It's not so much missing the meat, it's what you're forced to eat instead of meat. It's good for if you are trying to keep your weight down but you don't want to exercise, because you end up skipping a lot of meals because they're pointless. Do you want the, nah, I'll see you at dinner time, we'll try again. Tofu. What is tofu? Disgusting? Yes. Don't know what's inside it. The worst one I have to eat is halloumi now. Yeah. What I really like is a cheese that doesn't melt when it's hot and squeaks when you eat it. Halloumi? Oh, yes, please. How are you getting on with that lamb? Oh, it's melting in the mouth, is it? That's interesting, because the cheese seems to have an intruder alarm fitted to it. I still eat prawns. I'll be honest, I still eat prawns, because what else am I going to have in a curry? Carrot? I'd rather kill myself, thank you very much. Honestly, if you phone an Indian takeaway and say, can I have the vegetarian? They just stop listening. You might as well be saying, I don't really like flavour or texture. You pop a cauliflower on now and I'll pick it up in a week. I still have a prawn jalfrezi if I go out for curry, and every now and again I eat meat. I don't know where to. Like twice a year, but by accident I get pissed, and instead of going to a taxi rank, I go to McDonald's. And instead of saying, can you take me home, please? I say, can you give me a Big Mac? I'll pay you double if you feed me it, and then I don't have to touch it. It really is. That deprived and abused piece of beef is the best thing that goes in my mouth all year. It really is. It's so good that I have to hate myself solidly for 3 days afterwards, just to even it out. I've been on stag do's where men I know to be married have slept with prostitutes, and on the plane back, they've been consoling me because I had a fucking Big Mac. It's how much I will commit to self-hatred after a burger. Well, the important thing is, John, I think we've all made mistakes, but you have to move forward in your life. You can't let it ruin the rest of your life. I think we're coming into land, mate. I'm just going to have to go and wash my penis, okay? But more often than not, as I say, it ends in an argument. She goes to bed. I feel awful. I go in the kitchen and get a whiskey, and I see the dishwasher's finished. And I think, right, well, I'll unload the dishwasher because she made tea and loaded the dishwasher. On that occasion, not every night. I'm not an arsehole. That's how we operate. We used to do what I'm sure a lot of you do. If you cohabit, one would cook, the other one would wash up. We knock that on the head quite early doors because I tend to tidy up as I go while I'm cooking, and she doesn't. That's not a problem, is it? That's just two people who do things differently. She does it her way, and I do it right. I can't help myself. I'll run a little dish of soapy water at the beginning and I'll pop the chopping knife, just do that at a time, and just pop it in soak. If you don't want to wash it, that's fine. Pop it in soak. Pop a bit of water in there. You got the beans out, pop a bit of water in there. Bit of water in there. Let's not put it straight back on the ring there. Let's not put it straight back on the ring with that little teaspoon of bean juice still in it and the residual heat of the ring there. Just burning that on like a glaze in a kiln. You keep scrubbing, it don't come off, does it? It's just an orange pan now. Everything's orange. Sometimes I go in the kitchen, I think I'm getting cataracts. Residual bean juice everywhere. Just pop it in. So, same with your baking trays. Tip your roasties out, a little bit of water in there, back in the oven. Shut the door. The residual heat of the oven, it boils that water. It lifts all the grease off. You tip that away. You've washed the thing already, and you can write that down because that's fucking gold. That is. Oh. You're very kind, but I wish that hadn't been the biggest reception of the evening. I really do. Sometimes I think maybe I'm one of them political comedians, and then I see that and I think maybe I'm Prue Leith on tour. It's a lovely tip that, and that works for cottage pie, lasagna, or anything. It just slides straight off. Washing up becomes sexual. I do it naked when she's gone to bed. I'm not gonna lie to you. Just get it right off there with the finger. It slides right off. But you just pop it in soak. But what that would mean is I'd do a Sunday roast. Sometimes she'd go in to wash up. There's only a spoon and a plate. The next day she makes me a sandwich. And bomb's gone off in there. She's used everything we own. Sometimes I can't even get in the kitchen door. I have to go in the garden and climb in the window like that. Stand on the worktop shouting through, "How have you used a tagine?" So now the rule is you do everything, you get the next night off. That's fairest, right? But what it does mean is emptying the dishwasher is one of those weird jobs, and it's hours after the event. So I'll see it's finished. I think, well, I'll open the door, pull the drawer out. And to be fair, she'll often come back down from bed because she can hear me screaming. She said, "What's the matter, John? Is it the spider?" I say, "It's not the spider, it's the dishwasher." She says, "You're joking." I say, "No, get comfortable while we go through it all." Then we'll go through the litany of crimes that's happened in here because, like so many people, she seems to believe this is a magic box that cleans anything roughly in its vicinity, on the worktop, in the living room. If you love your family, you load this with the attention of a psychopath. Everything has its place. I say, well, it's this bowl that caught my attention first of all. This upturned bowl here on the top shelf. Now, it's not wrong to put a bowl on the top shelf on a light load, on a light load, on a light load, on a light load. Malfunctioned a bit there, I'm sorry. We tend to put the bowls down here, do you see, on the bottom shelf where the rungs are a bit wider. Now that tips the bowls forward, you get more purchase underneath to get that filth off. But what you've done here is perfectly acceptable on a light load. I just noticed you've put this upturned bowl on top of an upturned plate. Really had to ask how you thought that was ever going to get clean in there. We've created a hermetically sealed environment here. Look, there's nowhere for the water to get. There's only water in that box. Little people don't come in the back and lift everything. Give us a hand with this one, bloody hell. Pick it up. I say, look, that's exactly the same as when it went in, that one. Except now it's warm and damp and a day old. Did you see how dangerous?
No, fucking ducking ass.
Now we see that there is like hole in the system that make that some abusers, they are going out without a safety net for themselves and for their victims and their children.
This spring of 2022, the government is set to deploy electronic tracking bracelets for violent partners convicted of assault. The first to receive them will be among those tried at the Quebec City Courthouse and inmates at the Quebec City Detention Center.
We really want to work in this direction, meaning the responsibility of the perpetrator. This is where we see that we can reconcile and work together.
In Montreal, Brittany Enriquez, City News. If you need help, reach out. Call SOS Violence Conjugale 24/7 at 1-800-363-9010. If you fear you may become violent towards your partner, call Program for an appointment at 514-270-8462.
You can't fucking hurt anybody if you have no hands that fucking aren't broken.
More than 760,000 Ontario workers are celebrating the new year with a pay bump as Ontario officially hikes its minimum wage to $15 an hour today. But for many small businesses across Ontario, today isn't cause for celebration. Julie Kwasinski, Director of Provincial Affairs for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, says the Ontario government couldn't have picked a worse time to increase the minimum wage again. Only 35% of Ontario small businesses are at normal revenues. Their COVID debt is $190,000 and 18.5% are actively considering bankruptcy. Kwasinski says it's particularly difficult for the restaurant industry, whose liquor servers' wage jumps another $2.45 per hour. What it means is an alarming and whopping 20% increase to the liquor server's wage at a time when the restaurant industry can least afford it and is already on its knees. The CFIB says the issue at play is the fact that businesses don't know where they're going to get the funds to pay for these increases, especially when another wage hike is expected to come in October. Anything from being the final nail in the coffin for some, to getting rid of jobs entirely, to lowering people's hours so they're no better off ahead because they have less hours, to perhaps automating people out of their jobs. Kwasinski says if the government really wants to help people, they need to look at the other side of the coin. Not just how much money we give people, how much money we let them keep. So let them keep more of their hard-earned money, less taxes, but also help them with those costs that they need those wages for. The province has also released its rent increase guidelines today, setting majority of rent increases in the province at 1.2% this year. For City News, I'm Rianne Campbell.
Next tonight, Americans are feeling the pinch of rapidly rising prices at the supermarket. The spike is being caused by a combination of factors, but when will it end? Here's ABC's business and economics correspondent, Deirdre Bolton.
Tonight, grocery shoppers confronting inflation numbers that haven't been seen in years. The price of milk, 4.6 higher than a year ago. Bread, up 4%. Poultry, fish, and eggs, 13% higher. As consumers deal with the shock.
When I went into the store yesterday, normally like a pound of ground chicken is usually about $3.99. Yesterday, it was $7.99.
Even higher prices coming right away. According to the Wall Street Journal, beginning this month, companies like General Mills and Kraft Heinz are planning more price increases to wholesalers on everything from mustard to cereal to Jell-O, as they pass along their own perfect storm of rising costs, like higher transportation expenses because of rising oil prices, higher prices for animal fees, payroll costs pushed up because labor is short, and the havoc the pandemic has brought to the grocery supply chain.
You can't really wave a magic wand and just sort of fix the supply chain problem.
I'll make sure my son eats and I'll just have to reduce what I eat.
Many economists see prices climbing for many goods in the next 6 months by as much as 10 to 20%. There is hope of prices leveling off once the latest variant is behind us. Terry?
Deirdre Bolton, thanks very much for that. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage.
You guys are like kind of really just kind of like suggesting potential things. Ow. Ow. Do you cut your toenails on the train? Yeah. This is what we got to talk about. Ugh. Oh my god.
Well, guess what? It's a big day. Well, it wasn't today. It was a couple days ago. Brian Williams retired from the MSNBC News. And why was he at MSNBC News? Because he got fired from the NBC News because he got he was doing what they call stolen valor. He was pretending he was in war and he wasn't. Right? He's pretending he got shot at. All this stuff. It's called stolen valor. He can't do it. It wasn't like he put on a uniform and pretended. That's really worse. But that would have been funny had he did. Like, no, I was actually a captain. So network, what it says, network says actions of TV news anchor were wrong and completely inappropriate, and he's being taken off the air without pay.
So there's nothing you want.
How did he make it? How did he make it for those 6 months without pay? How did he do it? Now, the thing I remember about Brian Regan, I keep saying Brian Regan, about Brian Williams, is when we bombed Syria.
What?
This was his reporting.
That was cute.
I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons, and they are beautiful pictures.
Wait a minute, what? He said I'm guided? Is that how it started?
He said, I'm guided by the beauty of their weapons.
No,
Here we go.
I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons, and they are beautiful pictures of.
Hang on.
I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons, and they are beautiful pictures of fearsome armaments, making what is for them a brief flight over to this airfield before they hit.
Before it blows the shit out of some people and their legs go flying in different directions.
Yeah.
It is beautiful. The power.
It's real beautiful on the front end of the.
Yes. Well, so I used to have a joke. I go, the difference between Al Jazeera and CNN is CNN shows the bombs taking off, and Al Jazeera shows you when they land.
Cameron, fuck.
Dude, that's out of 1984 where you got to go to the movie to watch the weapons, and then he writes his diary. There was a lovely scene of someone exploding.
So that's who Brian Williams really is. He's just a mouthpiece for capitalism, military industrial, whoever is paying him. He's just a mouthpiece for it, and he always will be. I look forward to. So now here he is. He's retiring, and he gives his big speech. And my theory of why he's retiring is because he wants to go host a late night show. He's not quitting, believe me. You're going to see him in like February or March hosting his own talk show. Maybe because Ellen's getting moved out, they want to move him into the afternoon. Who knows? Something's going on. He's not walking away from fucking show business, believe me. Because that's what this is. He's not a newsman. He's in show business. That's what that is. You don't get the news from MSNBC. You get propaganda from a guy who's in show business.
He's going to be the new Jimmy Fallon sidekick.
I bet. Okay, so here we go. Here's what he said. Well, look at the time. I'll try to keep this brief. After 28 years of peacock logos on much of what I own, it is my choice now to jump without a net into...
Can you just fucking...
The peacock logo is on everything I own. I even branded it onto my scrotum like a Nexium cult. NBC didn't ask me to do it. They didn't have to. Jesus. All right, here we go. Well, look at the time. I'll try to keep this brief. After 28 years of peacock logos on much of what I own, it is my choice now to jump without a net into the great unknown, as I do for the first time in my 62 years. My biggest worry is for my country. The truth is, I'm not a liberal or a conservative. I'm an institutionalist. What? He's not. I'm not a liberal or a conservative. I'm an institutionalist.
So fucking annoying.
What? What do you believe in?
I believe in America.
Have you ever wondered how to light something up with any color you want? In this video, we're going to show you how to do it and not be cheesy. This is a high-end look. This is what luxury homes die for. We're going to show you the tricks of the trade. That's money, dude. What I want to do is open this thing up, and then I want to pour pretty much clear to the top, and then just go ahead and do a top coat that's translucent right there, but gives it some color, and then shine some light through it so it's like a giant kitchen nightlight. All I'm doing is just going through wherever there's bare spots now and having a little fun with it. If you're doing this for a customer, if this is what you do for a living, show your customers, this video. Show them what it takes. It's going to build value in your build. It's going to bring, something from, a normal countertop to way over the top, and that demands value, right? I mean, if you're going to get a backlit piece of stone, yes, you're going to pay some money.
Fuck yeah.
It can be done for as little as $20. You're not going to believe how simple this hack is. It's a construction piece of gold. It's a gold nugget. We're going to teach you all the steps right now. Guys, we are in a multi-million-dollar build. In this video, you're going to learn step by step a countertop masterclass that will save or make you thousands. It'll also save 10x your time. Stay tuned. Everything is included right here, right now. You got this.
Okay.
Yeah, 12 to 15 is your typical overhang, but I'm going to go arch here. So I'm going to go here. Okay, you ready? All right, pro tip on measuring. If you use your speed square right to your measurement, you don't have to put like a little line and then measure. It's perfect every time. All right, I want to cut something straight because this is going to be a seam to a factory cut on a piece of plywood. I want it really tight. And so I'm going to use my saw guide and get a perfect cut on site as if I brought a panel saw. But it's a lot cheaper than a panel saw. Heck, it's a lot cheaper than every saw guide on the market, and it's a straight cut every time. Let's go. I like that it doesn't move from my track, so when I'm trying to get around this stuff, look.
Okay. Oh, cool. That's neat.
Okay, your way. And then you need your two minor points or the low points on that arc. In this case, I have a 17-inch overhang on the high point and 12 all the way over here. That way I get really cool seating and just adds a little bit of an extra look. Cool. But remember, I have a post coming in. So that post is also going to be thrown in the mix. Let's see how this thing lays out. Let's try it.
Oh, you commented this was coming through.
She'll say yes. Am I wrong? No. That was mean. All right, let's see if it works. This is what I wanted. Let's see what the wife says. Here we go. All right, what do you think? We need your professional opinion on this. We got an arch here, 4 legs, the whole thing. What do you think?
It's freaking awesome.
Okay.
I think it looks amazing.
All right. Sweet. MDF time. All right, we're gonna double it up now. Type on 2 wood glue. MDF. Let's do this. All right, we flipped the island over and we're gonna go ahead and laminate the plywood to the MDF. We cut the MDF out and I grew it a little bit more. I didn't like that big jog in that you saw prior to that adjustment. We're gonna fill that in with some plywood. Another pro tip, we've stayed away from our 1.5 allowance. Reason we've done that is so when you rub your fingers underneath the countertop, you don't feel those screws. Again, that's why I like a rock face edge. That little lip does not matter.
Oh, okay.
Life is hard. I bought a new pair of shoes the other day, walked outside into the rain, and ended up stepping into some mud. Now they're ruined, and I'm bitter. But then I took a step back. Not literally, of course, but I really thought about it. And I came to the conclusion that nothing in life really matters. Here's why. The Earth has been around for 4.5 billion years. One day, humans became a thing, and we became conscious. This world seemed perfect for us. It wasn't scorching hot, it wasn't deathly cold. We fit right in the middle. The gravity on Earth was perfect. It allowed us to move and run and catch animals that conveniently existed for us humans to eat. There was water to drink. There was oxygen to breathe. It's as if we were put here for a reason. We began creating things. We began working together as a species, building empires, covering the planet, and fighting each other for whatever reason. Fast forward a couple million years, and here we are today. Computers, rockets, Elon Musk, they're all here. Somewhere along the line, we also, in a way, created something out of nothing. It's called time. We've laid out definitions of time, seconds, minutes, hours, years, but it doesn't really matter. We made those for our own use. Time is nothing more than a way to measure the passing of events. But we've only really set up these units of time based off of ourselves. A day is how long it takes the Earth to spin around once. A month is about how long it takes the moon to orbit the Earth, and also spin around once. A year is how long it takes the Earth to orbit the sun once. You get about 78 Earth revolutions around the sun in this journey called life. As poetic as that sounds, there's not much scale to these things once we pass a human lifetime. Sure, we can judge how long 1,000 or maybe even 10,000 years are. But after that, the timescales of things are just too much for our brains to handle. As much as you think you understand the 13.8 billion year lifespan of the universe, you really can't put that into an imaginable scale. On the scale of a human life, the universe is unbelievably old. But in terms of the universe's lifespan, pretty much nothing has happened yet. It's barely even started. We can make predictions about the next hundreds of trillions of years of the universe's life. We can figure out how and when our sun is going to blow up. We can figure out when our galaxy is going to collide with another. We can come up with theories that describe when the universe we've been put into is expanding faster than anything else physically possible. But yet, we have zero idea what happened in the fraction of a second between when there was nothing and when there was something. For some reason, as far as we can tell, we're the only conscious beings to have ever existed. But we don't even know what being conscious is. We developed consciousness only to be aware of the fact that nothing else is. We've grown so aware of our surroundings that the smarter we get, the smaller we become. As this thing we call time goes on, we begin to realize things. Things that prove that the universe probably wasn't made just for us. You were most likely born in a hospital. If not, props to you for making it this far. Back then, you were your parents' entire world for a small time, which is cute, but you aren't everything. 360,000 people are born each day. Of all of those people with the same birthday, some are going to do big things and change the world. Others are just going to die. That just happens. But Earth is just one planet. In our solar system, there's 8. Or 9 of those. For now, for life as we know it to exist, it's kind of hard to believe that there might be other life out there. It takes so much to happen for us to be able to exist. We've discovered over 4,000 exoplanets to date, planets that don't revolve around our sun. And we've found multiple examples of Earth-like planets, roughly the same shape, size, temperature, but yet there's nothing there from what we can tell. So if there are so many planets that could have life, why haven't we seen it yet? Why are there no signs? Well, we're just one solar system in an entire galaxy. There's over 200 billion stars in our galaxy alone. But that's just one galaxy. We're a part of the local group, which is a collection of 30 galaxies near our own. Andromeda is one of them. That's the one that's going to collide with our galaxy in about 4.5 billion years. By then, you'll be long gone. And soon after that, so will the Earth. The sun at this point will be reaching the end of its life. It's going to expand in size, and by the end, it will completely consume the Earth, shining over 3,000 times brighter than it does today. But even though our home planet will be gone, the rest of the galaxy wouldn't even notice. Billions of years on a multi-trillion-year timescale is truly nothing. But even so, there are some things that we're observing in the universe's infancy today that will drastically influence the far future. To keep it short, the universe is expanding. This is nothing new. A lot of people know this, but what many people don't know is that this expansion is speeding up. Now, we don't know why, but we have an idea of what's causing it. Dark energy. I made an entire video about this, so go watch that after. This dark energy is stretching the fabric of space-time. We don't know what it's made from. We know it's there, we observe its results, but we don't know exactly what it is, or what it's going to do. Dark energy, at least according to our current calculations, will eventually stretch the space-time between galaxies faster than the speed of light. The light emitting from our neighboring galaxies will travel towards us at the fastest speed possible. But even this won't be enough. The light will never reach us because the space between it is stretching faster than the light that is traveling through it. It will spread the universe so thin with galaxies that when we look out to observe what's around us, we won't see anything. We're going to end up all alone, confined to whatever galaxy we end up in. But in the end, even our galaxy will start to go dark. The fate of the sun is the same as it is for all stars in the universe. Eventually, trillions of years down the road, these lights in the sky are going to begin turning off, one by one by one. Without any new stars to keep things running, the universe is going to get a bit colder. Depending on their size, these dying stars begin to turn into white dwarfs or neutron stars, providing the last glimmers of light in a cold and dark universe. This is the very last hope for any surviving life forms in the universe. But eventually, trillions of more years after the last stars like our sun die, even these white dwarfs will begin to dim out. Some of these neutron stars roaming throughout the universe may collide by chance, resulting in the brightest known events in the entire universe: supernovae. But once these supernovae conclude, the universe is again plunged into darkness. All matter that used to make up the galaxies we see today will begin to fall into the black holes that kept things held together for so long. The Big Bang that created the highest temperatures ever known to physics ultimately results in the most dormant, dark, and cold configuration possible. From a universe teeming with light and beauty to a cold, barren wasteland. A universe dominated by black holes. But even now, the universe has just begun. These black holes are going to be around for a while, and the things we used to call galaxies, with stars and planets and life, are now just going to be full of black holes, and more black holes. This is how the universe is going to spend most of its time. Cold, dark, and alone. We're no longer talking about millions of years here. The timescales are now on quadrillions of years. But Even these black holes won't last forever. Through Hawking radiation, these black holes will slowly, very slowly, begin to evaporate away, one subatomic particle at a time, until eventually, after all the black holes fade out of existence, there is nothing left in the universe. A universe where nothing changes, where time becomes pointless. There's nothing. The nothingness of space, though, will continue to expand because of dark energy, a force that accounts for 70% of our universe that we don't even completely understand yet. Matter as we know it today, the things that make up everything you see, only accounts for barely 4% of the stuff in the universe. So maybe, just maybe, we're a fluke. We were never supposed to make it to the end, but we still have a role to play out today. We are one species on one planet, in one galaxy, in an almost indistinguishable part of the universe. Whether or not we came to exist, not much would be different. Every day we matter a little less and a little less, until eventually we realize that, in the grand scheme of things, we don't matter at all. Our galaxy could just disappear. It wouldn't really change much.
Sorry, Jack.
We came to exist in such a
Sorry,
weird time,
baby.
but it's also pretty unique. We know we're just the beginning, a blip in the universe's potential. But the only way to fulfill that potential is to start making progress today. It's not a stretch to say that there won't be others like us. Random sources of intelligent life spread throughout trillions of years. But now, we're at one of those stages where life is possible. And probably the easiest it's ever going to be. You get one life to do whatever you want. There's some things you can avoid, like school, or taxes. But other than that, you're free to do mostly whatever you'd like. If we can't figure out our purpose for coming to exist on this planet, if we can't figure out why or how the universe came into being, then our purpose is whatever we want it to be. If you want to sit around and play games all day, there are people doing that. If you want to build a multi-billion-dollar company that's going to help propel humanity to other worlds, there are people doing that as well. Anything you want to be or do can be done, and should be done. Like I said, our own purpose is whatever we want. Right now, if good things are happening to you, if bad things are happening to you, it's actually not going to last forever. You have zero idea what the future holds for you, and the most random of experiences can reroute your future in an instant. Everyone was dealt a hand in life that we honestly just didn't ask for. Some people's hands are better than others, but we all have to play with the cards we've been given in the best way we can. There's a chance that we humans may never figure out why everything in the universe acts the way it does. Is there life anywhere else, or are we the exception? For every answer, 100 new questions pop up. There's infinite possibilities as to how we came to exist, but there's infinitely just as many things to do while we're figuring that out. There's dogs to feed, there's people to meet, there's science to be done. So whatever you do while we figure out our spot in the universe, this universe at least, just try to enjoy it. Because no matter what happens to you, no matter how many times you mess up, no matter how far humanity ventures out into the unknown, in the end, it doesn't even matter.
Life is fundamentally different from dead stuff. Or is it? Physicist Erwin Schrödinger defined life this way. Living things avoid decay into disorder and equilibrium. What does this mean? Let's pretend that your download folder is the universe. It started orderly and got more and more chaotic over time. By investing energy, you can create order and clean it up. This is what living things do. But what is life? Every living thing on this planet is made of cells. Basically, a cell is a protein-based robot too small to feel or experience anything. It has the properties we just assigned to life. It has a wall that separates it from the surroundings, creating order. It regulates itself and maintains a constant state. It eats stuff to stay alive. It grows and develops. It reacts to the environment, and it's subject to evolution. And it makes more of itself. But of all the stuff that makes up a cell, no part is alive. Stuff reacts chemically with other stuff, forming reactions that start other reactions, which start other reactions. In a single cell, every second, several million chemical reactions take place, forming a complex orchestra. A cell can build several thousand types of protein, some very simple, some complex micromachines. Imagine driving a car at 100 kilometers an hour while constantly rebuilding every single part of it with stuff you collect from the street. That is what cells do. But no part of the cell is alive. Everything is dead matter moved by the laws of the universe. So is life the aggregate of all these reaction processes that are taking place?